And I apologize, I am getting over the flu, so I do get coughing fits, so I apologize if I get one while I'm up here. So we have had a courtesy car agreement in place for every bit of probably 20 to 25 years. We realized that we needed one in place many, many years ago. We're kind of stuck out there in the middle of nowhere. You can't like walk to somewhere if you come in and you have your plane has issues with maintenance. We're not very Uber-friendly or Lyft, no taxis. So you're kind of stuck once you get out there, and we realized that many years ago. So we utilize courtesy vehicles, which can be some of the old police cars, our lease vehicle that we have, for people to go into town. They go into town and eat while their aircraft is being maintained. They go into town and eat. On occasion, if they have maintenance issues and they have to stay overnight, they can come to a local hotel. Most everybody uses it only in Culpeper area. Of course, you can get to Remington pretty quickly, and there's a pretty good place down there to eat as well. We didn't have any issues that brought up a change in the policy, and this has been through many county attorneys, and they have tweaked it over the years a little bit with some verbiage. What was very prohibitive in the latest agreement that came out of the risk manager and the county attorney's offices was that the insurance was very high, the requirements for that. I have always had very good insurance myself, but if I had come in and asked to use the courtesy vehicle, my limits would not have been enough for me personally to have borrowed the vehicle myself. They were quite higher than the minimum requirements for the Code of Virginia. And that was kind of where we were having to turn down a lot of people from being able to use the car, and they would just be stuck at the airport. The first person that I was able to actually could utilize the car was a NetJets pilot, and he said it was a requirement to have a higher limit on his personal automobile insurance as a part of his employment. And so he was the first one we were able to allow to use the courtesy vehicle for that reason.
What about any of the surrounding airports? How do they manage their courtesy cars?
We have checked into that. Some people, you simply go in and say, you know, hey, I need to use the courtesy vehicle. They hand you the key. That would never be an option for us, and we've never had that kind of policy in place at all. They're all varied, and some of them, a couple of them did have good ones that we presented that could be utilized. And I think, you know, some of that was in play when we were looking at it, when the Airport Advisory Committee was looking at it, to kind of put together a policy. I would hope that we could come to, you know, some agreement on this, but the main thing is the prohibitive amount of the insurance that was required, personal automobile insurance that's required to use the car.
Further questions?
So Tanya, so you all have been using the waiver, the agreement that the county attorney has drawn up with the higher insurance limits, right? I mean, just recently.
Yes, just recently,
correct?
yes.
And so, and you're saying how many pilots have come in and said, oh, I can't use that courtesy
We've
car
had
because
we've had to turn away about 7 different pilots. We've had 3 that have been able to utilize it.
Mm-hmm. And is it posted on your website or anything like that? Do we have a website?
No, we don't have that on our website currently.
Okay.
And I don't believe that you all have a copy of the one that we had been using for many, many, many years. And I will be glad to get that to you all if you all would like to see the one that we'd had in place for any number of years.
We have a copy of one that you have suggested. Is that different than what you were using?
Yes, Yes, that's the one kind of that the Airport Advisory Committee kind of compiled based on what a lot of the other locations were using as well.
Okay. Further questions?
Well, not for the county attorney.
Thank you, Ms. Woodward.
Okay.
Mr. Bates?
Ms. Weimer, could you, what's the driver behind having I know the county is the one that's being protected here, but I mean, if the state requirements is it a feeling that the state requirements are maybe too low when it comes to a government?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's exactly it.
So is it a possibility, I know in some situations when you rent a car, or you can pay additional as a rider to have additional coverage. And seeing how this is a courtesy car, it's not costing the pilots anything to use the car, and I'm not trying to complicate what's presented here before us, but is it a possibility that you could have, if you didn't have the requirements, you could pay the 15, 20, or whatever the amount is for that day to?
We would have to find a company that would be willing to give us a policy like that. As part of our normal insurance policies that we have now, our coverages are for employees. They're not really for this kind of a use. So, I don't know whether VACOR would be at all willing to do that. My suspicion would be that they would not. So we'd probably have to go out into the market and try to find an insurance company that would be willing to write a policy along the lines of what you're talking about. That's part of the reason that we're exploring a whole other, way to go about this, as far as maybe finding a company that would rent us a car, would provide the insurance coverage on that car that would be separate from the county's policies altogether. And that's, going to take a little time to come up with. And part of my concern, as I've stated, and I wrote you guys, the memo just kind of telling my perspective on it, is just that, I worry about that one time, and that's part of my job. I worry about, that one pilot having a really catastrophic accident and it affecting the county's insurance, the county's ratings as far as our insurance, as well as, just potentially having a lot of liability to somebody out in the public based upon the actions of someone that's a non-employee.
Is it a possibility this insurance company that we have could drop us because of this?
I don't think they drop us, but they may there's a possibility, and I said this in some of the correspondence that I've said. I can't say for certain that they would file a DEC action, what they call a declaratory judgment action, but there is that possibility. I mean, if a non-employee is driving this car and there is $1 million lawsuit, as we have one that's actually pending right now with VACOR from actually one of our employees got rear-ended, and there's $1 million lawsuits that's been filed. There is a possibility that they could say, hey, this was not an employee, this is not going to be covered at all, so whatever came out of that lawsuit, whether it's $1 million judgment, a $500,000 judgment, a $20,000 judgment, we may have to pay that out of the county's coffers because the insurance wouldn't cover it. Now, again, I'm not saying that's 100% going to happen, but it could. And I just wanted to make you all aware that that's why I'm concerned about this.
But we're actively looking for an insurance company that would possibly.
Yeah, we're going to have to do an RFP, send it out. We're looking at a situation where if we can find a partner, if you will, a company that's willing to do it, we're looking at trying to lease a vehicle that also includes the insurance on that vehicle, and that way that would take the county's liability out of it completely.
That's crazy. That's crazy, in my opinion. Right now, if you are sitting at the airport and you wanted to come here, for $12.97, Uber will have you here by 11:51. That's what they're saying. Not only that, you can do that pretty much any time where we have the hours, And we don't have peak pricing here, so we don't have an issue where it's going to cost you $35 to get to downtown Culpeper from the airport. And you frequently get longer wait times, meaning you got to wait up to 8 minutes to be picked up. Uber's a great solution. Now, if we want to pay for Uber, we could do it, but that's a lot cheaper than this RFP process and insurance and leasing cars and everything else. So if the county thought that, hey, we just need to subsidize pilots at the airport, put $1,000 in a fund and we just solved the whole year.
Mr. Chairman, I think the question is more not the subsidy, it's the convenience of having the car right there. You hop out of the airplane, you get in the car, you go to Culpeper, and versus having an Uber come back. And
How long does it take to read the agreement and sign it versus waiting for Uber when you get there?
Other questions?
Couple. What is the difference in what the county attorney is recommending as far as the coverage amounts versus the state?
That, I can tell you, sir, the state minimums, if you're talking about just liability, as of January 1st, they went up. They used to be 30, 60, 20. Now it's 50, 100, and 25. So that's injury for one person, injury for two people, and property damage. So $50,000 per one person, $100,000 for more people, and then $25,000 in property damage. Those are the liability bare minimums that are required by the state of Virginia now, as of January 1st of 2025.
Have we looked at getting a Waymo or another self-driving vehicle that we could just park out there and not have to? Seriously.
Ms. Weimer, they're the state minimums. What are the numbers you're requesting in your proposal?
Okay, so what is in the agreement that was sent was per occurrence property damage, $150,000, per person bodily injury, $100,000, per accident bodily injury is $200,000, per accident uninsured, underinsured is $20,000, or is that right? I think that's right. And then what they had, just keep in mind, the previous agreement, which I have, and I'm happy to send it to you all if you want to see it, the previous agreement that had been in place had 100 personal, 300 bodily injury, and 50,000 property damage. So what we've done, or what I proposed, was going up $50,000 on the, or $100,000 on the property damage, staying the same on the bodily. Per the accident actually is lower, and then the $20,000 in the uninsured. So it's not that dissimilar to what they had before. I don't know what, pilots were doing then, or whether it was a problem with that previous agreement, but we felt like we needed to up some of it based upon just what the trends have been for accidents in the state.
Is there a risk manager here? I mean, here.
Yes, she is.
Is that something she might want to comment on?
I'm happy to answer questions. Go ahead.
So, based off of what we have in two different drafts, you concur with the county attorney that this is where we need to go, or do you see that this being a major problem at the airport that needs to be addressed?
I actually did suggest the increase in the insurance requirements. The average cost of an accident today is no longer just fixing the vehicle. People are suing over lost time, lost wages, mental anguish. So we no longer have a $40,000 vehicle replacement claim. Now we have $1 million lawsuit on our hands. I was doing this kind of work for the city of Virginia Beach for the past 3 years, basically mitigating claims against a municipality. So in my best judgment, I think the increased insurance requirement is necessary, at least until we find a better solution. It does pain me that we are losing some revenue, I guess, from fuel sales, as Tanya mentioned, at the airport, and I understand that. My current policy reflects the exact things that I'm asking for, and I consider that a full coverage policy. So when you're looking at state minimums, that is minimum liability coverage. It's not a full, so when you go and lease a vehicle, you're required to have full coverage, so you're going to have excess of even those state minimums. So when I wrote in those suggestions, I brought in that fact, that we're looking for a full coverage replacement should something happen.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, I can tell you, I never would have thought in my lifetime that I would see somebody go out here and they're going to pay $100,000 for a pickup, or you're going to pay $80,000 for a car. So I think, everyone can agree that a total loss vehicle, and by the time you add, if there is any bodily injury, that.
And property damage, I mean, go ahead and take one of Dominion's light poles out and see how much they charge you to replace it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're saying that if a person just goes and rents a car, that this is going to be similar
Very,
insurance
very
rates,
similar.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Even the rules, even the things about where the car can go, maybe not per se a normal rental, because some people rent them here and take them to Florida. But just for further reference, employees of the counties with take-home vehicles are taxed as a fringe benefit to use a county vehicle for county purposes. But yet we have basically been allowing citizens of who knows where to drive county-owned, municipally funded vehicles for free, no questions asked.
That's a pretty big risk, I would say.
Me personally.
And you're the risk manager, so you would know, right?
Yeah. All it
Okay.
takes is one incident, and
Yeah.
then what happens?
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for anybody?
Further questions? Discussion? Further discussion? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor which is to accept the airport's recommendation on how to handle this. Any further discussion on that before we call the question? Mr. Rosenberger.
Somebody's trying to.
Oh, sir.
Mr. Chairman and the Board of Supervisors, my name's Justin Courier. I'm the co-chair for the Airport Advisory Committee out at the airport. I'm also a pilot who's out there, and I wanted to express to you guys that, we're concerned about liabilities here, and I recognize that completely. However, we're not talking about a 16-year-old boy who's going out there to drive this car and asking for this courtesy car. We're talking about pilots who are flying in multi-million-dollar jets and who have tremendous amount of hand-eye coordination and skill with navigating and using, very expensive equipment. It's a very small world out at the airport, and it's a very small community. What we're looking at, and our concern is that, we have these corporate jets. We are trying to grow this airport. We're trying to expand the airport and the revenue that it generates for the county. And it's a very small community, and we'll have one jet come in, and he can't get a quick loaner car, which is used throughout the county, throughout the state, throughout the, even throughout the country. If he can't get it, he's going to talk to his buddy. He's going to say, you can't get a courtesy car there at the airport. Let's go over to Warrenton. Or he's going to say, let's go down to Stafford. I'm a pilot myself as well, too. I have multiple airplanes. I fly all over the country. And this is something that is actually, during the planning process, something I look for is a courtesy car. Can we get Uber? Yes. When I fly up to Tetersboro, I pick up Uber, but it's a wait time. And it's one of these things where it's kind of nice to just get there, jump out, and go. And, it's just one of those things where it's this courtesy that we're trying to provide for pilots to make our airport something that they would like to come to, something that everybody wants to be there because we're extending a service that is common throughout the country. I was out in Burlington here a few years back ago, and my wife and I were flying out to New Orleans, and we stopped in Burlington. They had a courtesy car there. It's a beater. It wasn't anything very exciting, but my wife and I were able to go out and go have lunch, come back, and then continue on our way. Again, I want to stress, I recognize that there is liability and there's risk with everything, but I think the downside of making our requirements too extraneous is going to really reduce the viability of our airport being used by pilots and the traffic we're trying to encourage to come into our county. That's all.
Thank you. Any questions?
Question, but just a brief comment, having listened for this. I mean, I'm on the Uber side, but if I were looking at the other two, having a total of apparently 10 requests, 7 of which were rejected, indicates that we do have a problem with the form as presented. So because of that, if we were to provide the car, I think it would be important to follow the Airport Advisory Committee's recommendation. They're very much aware, I mean, it's the Airport Advisory Committee, they're aware of risks, and I think that they probably are doing the best to balance things.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, if I may add too, if I were to get in my airplane and fly to Warrenton Airport, I would go up to Dave and I'd ask for the keys. He would give them to me. I wouldn't even sign an agreement to go there. Going down to Stafford, I may sign an agreement. I'm not sure. I haven't been rendered, tried to get the courtesy car from Stafford. But I think the requirements that myself and the rest of the Airport Advisory Committee have, we've spent a tremendous amount of time and effort trying to go through this. And we have come up with a document which we think satisfies the liability that we anticipate and also is not so onerous as to drive pilots away from our community.
So, sir, you're saying that if you fly into Warrenton or Spotsylvania or wherever, Safford, I'm sorry, that the insurance requirements are not the same as presented by the county attorney?
No, sir. If I were to
Their
fly
minimum, their
if
state
I were to
minimum?
fly into Warrenton and go up to Dave, he would ask for a copy of my driver's license, hand me the keys, and I'd walk away. I wouldn't even sign anything. This is something that, as I try to present, this is something that's very common with all the small airports around the country, not just here in the state of Virginia, but around the country. Courtesy cars have been there, and it's something that a lot of pilots, when they're planning a trip, we're actually looking for these places just because it eases our ability to move around as we're traveling.
Thank you.
Was there any other questions?
No, we're good. Thank you. Sir?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Chris Goddard. I work at the airport. I'm a billing specialist there. I'm the one that contacted all the local airports to find out what they had before we drafted the one that the committee is putting forth today. And I can easily tell you what Warrenton has, what Stafford has. Stafford, as a matter of fact, came back to us and said, we don't have a policy. Could we please have a copy of yours? Warrenton, Manassas, all the local airports basically put the onus of liability on the person who is taking the car. They acknowledge that when they sign their form. They are taking responsibility under their insurance, just the way you would when you rent a car. You have the option to decline the insurance company that they're offering you, and you say, no, my insurance will cover it. That's the way the other airports do it. Thank you.
Any further question or discussion? Mr. Bates?
Real quick, I just want the audience to know, I don't think anybody up here is in favor of taking away the courtesy car. And just because well, that's fine, but I mean, you're going to provide, if you can provide something that they can get the transportation. But I, for one, am not in favor of taking away the courtesy car. But I am not in favor of walking the line just because another county has exposure that could end up in a major lawsuit, that's the way to go. I don't feel comfortable doing that. With that said, I'm thinking, okay, well, you're flying $1 million airplane in here. You would think that you would have some sort of insurance that you're flying this $1 million airplane. So I don't think that what we're asking for and the limits here is unreasonable. But in light of keeping us, keeping things going, I would support the motion with the understanding that we are actively looking for another alternative that would be a separate insurance that would cover that or whatever. But just because another jurisdiction is doing this and just throwing the keys across the counter and saying, have at it, I don't feel that's a real good policy for Culpeper to follow, so.
Could I make one comment? The only real concern that I had, and the reason that I brought it to the board's attention, is that the proposed agreement from the committee, basically under number 5, doesn't talk about any kind of limits. They just basically, it says insurance, the pilot assumes responsibility. It doesn't give any parameters whatsoever. So, I mean, that was part of what guidance I was hoping that the board would give us is, you know, do you want them to at least have the bare state minimums, or do you want them to just, oh, well, I'll take care of it? And again, you're right. A lot of pilots, a lot of other people or people that own businesses, they have what they call umbrella policies. And umbrella policies, you know, include not just one thing, but multiple vehicles, multiple things, and they have different limitations that are higher because they have these umbrella policies. I don't know if all of these people do have those or don't have those, so that was one of the things that I just wanted to get some guidance from you all.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have a lot of concern about the pilots driving the car, but it's a 16-year-old decides he can run from the cop and hits one of our vehicles at 100 miles an hour, because, you know, that stuff happens all the time. Is there a way that the county could have that vehicle insured that would cover us, and we pay the insurance as the loaner vehicle?
That's what we're exploring.
Okay, all right, well, that would be the answer to that.
It would seem to me this is a liability to the county, and yes, the pilots do fly million-dollar airplanes and have training, and frankly, I find it hard to believe they don't have basic automobile insurance. But I find that hard to believe.
Even basic
But
coverage, though, these values are
It would seem to
higher.
me that the courtesy car is sort of a standard at a local airport, and I think we need to continue that, but I really believe we need to come together with some sort of a proposal and an idea of how we can cover the county for the liability here. Because frankly, the insurance coverage, item 5, in the airport's suggestion, I don't think that holds much water. You know, we're just saying, yeah, I'm going to sign this to say I'm going to hold the county harmless, but there's nothing here that really says how you will do that. I think that's an issue. So I'm going to have a hard time accepting this letter as it is presented. Possibly it would be good to put together the county attorney and the risk manager with some people at the airport to come back with a different proposal that could do that. Would that be a possibility? And we can put this to a vote, wherever you want to go here. Ms. Cogino.
Well, so I think one of the biggest things that kept people from being able to utilize this is that property damage of $150,000. I just looked up mine. I have full coverage on my car because I still owe money on it, and my property damage is $100,000. So you're going to have a lot of people that have full coverage on their vehicles that will not meet these minimums because that one particular is, you would have to ask for addition. I believe they even had one pilot go on his phone and up his policy so that he could actually take the car out. So I think there may be just one or two items that, yes, two of them might be slightly lower, one of them is slightly higher, but that's the one that's exclusionary. And so if we could work on that, or even just proof of insurance, that would be something that's, I mean, most people don't, everybody has to pull it up on their phone and whatnot to get proof of insurance, but I don't think you're gonna, that personal property damage is the one that I think is the major stickler.
The motion on the floor is to approve this letter as it is presented. Mr. Underwood.
Yes, while I don't believe we should have a courtesy car for lots of reasons, liability, et cetera, the majority of this board and the Airport Advisory Committee believes we should. If we're going to have one, I am fine doing it with less, I mean, I guess you could say where the county is taking incrementally more liability because we don't have specific limits. And the reason I'm fine is we're asking, the county, if we have it there, we're always going to be liable. And whether we're liable for 100,000 or 150,000, that's not the big issue. If the issue, we're taking the 50 grand liability on the county, sign me up. So that's why I'm fine not looking at the amounts and accepting the advisory committee's position. The real risk is that it's something much greater than that, that's much greater than the insurance that we're thinking about. And as long as we have that vehicle there, we're going to have that risk whether we do option A or option B. So therefore, I'm okay doing A. Make it easier for, if you're going to have the car, make it where the pilots can use it.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll support the motion, but I'd like continued work done on this to see, I don't want to open the county up for liability. None of us here should want to do that. So I think that you've got to do further study and see what we can come up with that's a workable solution.
Ms. Calgino, would you accept modifying your motion that the airport committee and the county attorney will work on an alternative?
Yes.
Okay.
Which means, Mr. Chairman, that the draft agreement remains in place until another document comes before us, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. What, excuse me?
Question. Let's move on.
I'm getting there. Okay. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on. Public Safety Committee, Mr. Bates.
Public safety was the directors' meeting and the minutes.
Okay. E911 Board of Directors, Mr. Lee.
Minutes as presented, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll move on. Item number 7, Economic Development Director's Report. Mr. Rothamel.
Still good morning. So good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I see the sun creeping in behind me here, ready to get me. So we'll get going. For SIPS of Culpeper, I want to give you an update on that. This is using Goal 3.2 to maintain Culpeper Harvest Days Farm Tour, and specifically the objective we were trying, when we adopted or when we presented the strategic plan, trying to shoulder programming around the farm tour. So in 2024, we launched SIPS of Culpeper. That was in April. We had 8 participating locations. All of our craft beverage manufacturers participated, and Belmont Farms has since added the brewery. They are all, every location at each of these participants is open and utilizing it. So when you go to Old House, you can go to the winery, you can do the brewery or the distillery. They all are participating. So everyone has full participation. And this program highlights the craftsmanship behind our beverages and encourages residents also to broaden their horizons. So if they're only going to their same favorite, that they understand that we have other locations as well. To Tier 1 passport, you have 5 participating locations, and then you earned a pint glass. And then Tier 2, you went to 7. So Tier 1, you went to the 5, turned that in. Tier 2, you went to 7 new. So that would have, if you'd done both passports, that would have required 12 visits. And you got to earn a hat with that. So these are some pictures and some ads that we had running for 2024. 514 pint glasses were earned, 108 hats were earned. That's an economic impact of $26,608. The way we come to that, our business development manager, Winona Pritz, kept every passport that was turned in. She went through each one to know which locations they went to, then understanding the average price at each location. So when we say it's $26,608, this is one of our most exact estimated direct economic impact. This is only including what they purchased for their passports. This does not, if you ordered a drink and then also got a pizza, that the pizza is not included in that. So this is directly from what we collected of the 2 passports. So very excited and happy with the results of that, considering this only went from April through the end of the year. For 2025, same format. still Tier 1, go to 5, Tier 2, go to 7. The giveaways changing. The giveaway this year is a stemless wine glass. The idea being that Mrs. Pritz had is that we would go through various drinks that are offered. So glasses that reflect the drinks that are being manufactured. So we did the pint glass. This year we're doing the wine glass. And then there's a hat with a new color. The color is blue this year. So changing the giveaway every year. This started in January. Advertising has already gone out. You can see the updated passport information. I think that's the last one.
Thank you, Mr. Ruthmel. Any questions?
I hope we're not advertising this at the airport courtesy car counter.
I hope not. Any further questions?
That is not a drop-off location, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next is the administrator's report. Mr. McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be real brief. Just after our morning meeting this morning, we're going to get hard into the budget. At work session, we'll focus on a little bit of revenues that we know at this time and some challenges, which one big one we've already discussed a little bit this morning. We'll have to discuss some more as we move along. And the next target date after today will be next week. We'll have some of our heavy hitters and outside agencies that will come present before the board at your work session on February 13th, which will be next Thursday. And that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, is there a motion for closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into closed meeting as permitted under Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A, 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 29, to 1, discuss and consider a citizen appointment to the Culpeper Cable Commission and the Public Transportation Board. 2, to discuss and consider recommendations of appointment to the Circuit Court as to the 2025 Board of Equalization. 3, discuss the potential purchase of real properties located in the West Fairfax District where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position, negotiating strategy, and financial interest of the board/county. 4, consult with legal counsel regarding a specific legal matter, in particular a pending lawsuit requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel where, if made public initially, the legal position of the board/county would be adversely affected. And last, number 5, discuss and consider the potential award of a public contract involving the expenditure and/or the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the board/county would be adversely affected.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? We're in closed session. And we're going to take a 5-minute break.